Are you now, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
The late 40s and early 50s were years of recovery and optimism for the future of America. After all, World War II had ended, and the Great Depression was coming to a close. However, suspicion was thick in the air. The Cold War was just beginning, and a Red Scare, or fear of communism, had occupied the government, specifically the House of Representatives, where a new committee was created, named the House Committee on Un-American Activities, or HUAC. The HUAC searched out communists, and soon turned to Hollywood. Movies were seen as potential sources of communist propaganda. A dark age of film was on the horizon. The HUAC began holding trials interrogating Hollywood's cast and crew, from big-time stars to screenwriters, directors, and producers. They asked if the interrogatee was a communist, and if yes, to expose any colleagues of theirs who could also be communist. The punishment for saying yes was huge. In order to try to completely remove any sort of communist propaganda from movies, admitted communists would be blacklisted, or banned from working in film. The hearings were often public, with the press listening in. Reputations, jobs, and relationships were at stake here. Those who refused to testify could be held in contempt of Congress. The committee successfully blacklisted over 100 famous screenwriters and actors from the silver screen easily. However, one group of men would not go down without a fight. Among these men were Alva Bessie, Herbert Biberman, Lester Cole, Edward Dmytryk, Ring Lardner Jr., John Howard Lawson, Albert Maltz, Samuel Ornitz, Robert Adrian Scott, and Dalton Trumbo. 7 of the 10 were screenwriters, 2 were directors, and 1 was a producer and screenwriter. Some worked for big-time communities such as Warner Brothers and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. They ranged in age from early 30s to one man in his 60s, with varying degrees of success at the time. Prior to their hearing by the HUAC, they had created over hundreds of movies, some of which were nominated for or won Academies. Most witnesses, up until now, had been friendly or compliant with the HUAC. These men, when called to speak about their communist affiliations, would rather bring the injustices of the HUAC's investigations to light. They pointed out that the trials held to expose and blacklist communists were a violation of their First Amendment rights, and that they should be able to support any political party without consequence. Their resistance to the HUAC brought them to be known as the Unfriendly 10, or Hollywood 10. Their hearings were often shouting matches instead of trials. Some members of the 10 literally had to be pulled away from the witness stand in order to get back on track.
And I do not believe this committee has any more right to inquire into my political affiliations than I believe that an election official has the right to go into the voting booth and examine the ballot which has been marked by the voter.
Eventually, the men were held in contempt of Congress, put in federal prison, blacklisted, and were forced to pay a fine of $1,000, all except for Edward Dmytryk. While in prison, he decided to comply with the HUAC, admitting he was a communist and revealing more than 20 colleagues he suspected were communists. The after effects of the Hollywood 10's trial shook America. Hollywood began creating several anti-communist movies, people fearing for their jobs and hoping to please the HUAC. The public began to worry for their right of free speech and political association, and about media censorship. Some screenwriters secretly returned to the film industry with a goal to undermine the blacklist. They wrote scripts for movies under fronts, one of them being Dalton Trumbo from the blacklist. Under the name Robert Rich, Trumbo won an Academy Award for his script of the movie The Brave One. The blacklist eventually ended in 1960 when Otto Preminger revealed that Trumbo was the screenwriter of his movie, Exodus.
Why didn't we avoid all this? Why didn't we answer the questions yes or no as the committee demanded? Because we wanted to challenge the right of the committee to ask such questions.